Hello, welcome to Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes. I'm Josh,
Hey, I'm Wes.
and today we're gonna talk about Jeannie C. Riley's 1970 album "Country Girl."
Yeah, we've gotten ourselves out of the mid '80s and we've gone back in time to visit a pretty pleasant record that I'm glad we decided to dig into. So there's really not a lot out there about it.
Yeah, we were just gonna try and change pace a little bit today and find something else we hadn't really listened to, and we've both settled on this record by Jeannie.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot out there about Jeannie's life that's been covered pretty well, but I think it's helpful just to give a little background on who Jeannie is in case anybody listening is not familiar. So you dug up some good info on her, right?
Yeah, Jeannie C. Riley, she was born in Anson, Texas on October 19th, 1945. And I was curious where Anson is, and it kind of makes sense after you hear the first song, but it's kind of by Abilene, it seems,
Okay.
not far from Dallas. And then she moved to Nashville after getting married, pretty young, it seemed. And she said Weldon Merrick, who was a great pedal steel player, heard her demos and convinced her to come there. But tying into her first episode, actually, her first single ever was on Johnny Paycheck's Little Darlin' Records.
Wow. I mean, I remember you had texted me about that and said that was the case, and we had just talked about Little Darlin' Records. Obviously the first episode we covered Johnny Paycheck, but it's just strange that we didn't pick that up because of that connection. But it's kind of fascinating that that's how it works. Although I feel like the more of these we do, the more common that will become.
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of fun to, for me at least, to keep finding the different connections among the different albums because they're probably all strung together some way. And it's kind of fun to tie them back into each other.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Well, so Little Darlin' Records though wasn't really when Genie became more of a household name of that era. What happened there?
No, it seemed like it actually seemed like there was a lawsuit involved and kind of a mess. And she got out of that. She was found by Shelby Singleton, who ran Plantation Records, not the best name record company, but
No.
Singleton had a ton of hits back then. He also had SSS, which was his initials, and that was more of a R&B soul label.
Also had
But
David Allen Coe. You pointed out, right? His first couple of records.
it did. It had quite a bit, and I guess he heard Harper Valley PTA and wanted to have Jeannie record it, and I mean, that song became one of the biggest hits ever for country music. It was up until 1981, she was the only uh, female country artist to have a number one hit on both the Billboard country and pop charts at the same time with Harper Valley PTA. But that song was a massive hit. I mean, brilliant song by Tom T. Hall. That really set her off on her career.
Yeah, it was definitely my introduction to her. The album that it's on is pretty brilliant overall, and really it's so interesting because the start of her sort of stardom in that world, in the world of country and pop, she was, I mean, to me, I don't even think this is an opinion. I think it was just fact that she was almost seen as counterculture. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we go into some of these tracks on this. But she then kind of seemed to do everything she could to move away from that very quickly after that song.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different time. You're talking late 60s. So many different movements were going on at that time, and I think this pretty progressive song, honestly, that Tom T wrote, kind of about the hypocrisies of life, and someone being a little more progressive and comfortable in their image and how it's receiving backlash from other people. And, she kind of was seen in that way, wearing mini skirts back then, things that were a little controversial. And she was a huge star then. I mean, she had a TV show, a variety show. There was a movie made after Harper Valley PTA. She was won a bunch of Grammys. I mean, she was huge when Harper Valley PTA came out. So she was definitely like a pop and country icon at the time.
Yeah, it's fascinating too. Again, I don't. We don't have to get too stuck on Harper Valley PTA, but I remember reading that thing where she had said that she thought it was a little too similar to Bobby Gentry "Ode to Billy Joe," and they do have a very similar feeling. They have the same sort of like rhythm, and they're structured similarly. But it's just fascinating that she almost wanted to avoid that, and then ultimately it became almost the same kind of phenomenon because I believe that also got turned into a TV show or something like that, and kind of shot Bobby Gentry into fame too. So kind of a similar arc of those two songs.
Yeah, and Shelby Singleton was actually he told the musicians to play just like Ode to Bobby Joe. So
Well, it worked.
I think they were trying to not necessarily rip that one off, maybe a little bit, but I mean this song was way bigger of a hit than that song. I recommend listening to Cocaine and Rhinestones for a deep dive on that. And Shelby Singleton, it's pretty interesting if you're wanting to dive more into that. It's really well covered and not what we're going to talk about today, but it is important to have context of how big of a star she was right then because, I mean, that really is one of the biggest country singles ever to come out.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, they covered he covered it pretty comprehensively on that pod series. There's a couple episodes devoted to it, and definitely worth digging into. But a lot has been written about that and said about it, and but it does color in some of the context of where she was at in her career when this album came out, Country Girl.
Yeah, and, as two Kentucky boys, too, we got to talk a little bit about that song since Tom T. Hall wrote it. So if one of the biggest country songs ever is written by Kentucky, and you gotta at least mention it.
Well,
The great storyteller.
yeah, one of the best. I love every story. I actually heard. I can't think of the name of the track, but I was driving earlier and the country radio stations was playing. It was Willie's station on Sirius, but they were playing. What's the one about spending the day in the jailhouse? What's the name of that song?
Oh, that one off the top of my head, I can't think of.
Yeah, it's a good one though. It's I don't wouldn't say it's funny, kind of funny. I had a on my radio show. I did one that was really devoted to like breaking the law and spending time in jail. And I remember pulling that Tom T. Hall track for that one and just getting a kick out of it. But anyway, Country Girl came out in 1970. Did pretty well. I mean, the title track did great, but overall, the record itself was not a flop either, right?
I actually couldn't even find how much the actual record sold, but I mean, yeah, she was coming off one of the biggest selling records ever. Definitely probably was a letdown for Shelby Singleton then because it wasn't the same sort of success that she had with Harper Valley PTA. But this record is very different sounding. This is a very country record for sure.
Yeah, aptly named, Country Girl. Yeah, it's a, you put a note in here that you couldn't find a lot of info on the album. I think that's what we spent. I actually thought we would never have an album that was as hard to find info on as the Johnny Paycheck Survivor album, but it turns out we were wrong because there's even less documented about this. We did finally find some info about who played on it and sort of a little bit of background, but I I don't want to say this is like lost to time or anything because the title track was pretty popular and probably there's people who are still familiar with it today, but I doubt this is being talked about deeply anywhere. I certainly couldn't find any evidence of that.
Yeah, and it has an awesome, like, kind of late 60s looking album cover. It's One, yeah, we couldn't find much information at all. We were really digging through it, listening to stuff. I mean, Country Girl's the only song off this album I could find a live performance of. She did on the Johnny Cash show. Even Shelby Singleton, it seemed like he never put credit listings on albums. I don't. There's songwriters, but not who played on the albums. I don't know why. We did find what seems to be pretty reasonable list that I think's accurate based on who I know played on some Shelby Singleton stuff. But yeah, it was really hard to dig up any information about this album at all, which was fun. It kind of made me feel like I was doing some web sleuthing or something. But
Yeah, I mean, the only way we ultimately found our way to some of the people who may have played on the record is you had suggested, rightfully so, a good year that one of the tracks sounded like Pete Drake, and so trying to search and see if it was in fact him playing on it led us to like I assume something that's either no longer indexed well on Google or what, but just kind of an old website where someone had done that work and listed it. So it seems very trustworthy though, especially based on who was doing a lot of session work then and just the way it sounds. So I think it's a pretty trustworthy source.
yeah, for sure. And based on who played on Harper Valley PTA and stuff. I mean, Jeannie's still around, thankfully, but I think most of the people I saw that are on that album, they're not around anymore. So it's hard to really know.
Well, anything else you want to say about that sort of the background, or should we just dive in?
No, I think that takes us into the first track on the album, which is Country Girl. It was written by Margaret Lewis and Myra Smith, which seems like they wrote a lot of songs for Shelby Singleton and different artists on his label. Um, this one actually was a top 10 hit for Jeannie. It reached number 7 back when it came out, and it was the only single from the album that charted. So it's a great opening song, very country. It has that kind of dobro riff that comes in, and a little reminiscent of Harper Valley PTA at the beginning, but oh, what I'd give to be a country girl again, to be with my people, my man, and my kids. I love that kind of line in the chorus, but really just a classic, straightforward country track. Some pedal steel playing off the acoustic. I definitely like this opener for sure. I can see why it charted. It sounds as good as any song that came out back then.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a few people that you could pull out of country music and pretty easily identify as having some of the better voices. I mean, really, Johnny Paycheck would have been up there. You certainly George Jones, but I would say Jeannie is up there in that sort of upper echelon of great singers. She has a fantastic voice and can carry a song so well. And yeah, this is a great way to start the record. I think it's a little ironic that this is a sort of, and maybe starts to lead in some of the direction that she goes to, but it's just a bit ironic that one of her other big hits, obviously, we just talked about Hyper Valley PTA, was sort of this progressive song or seen that way and certainly played that way. And then she kind of started to kind of outrun that reputation. I mean, part of this I identify with, right? I grew up in a small town, and like, there's a longing for that sometimes. A lot of people spend a lot of their life trying to get away from it, and then you sort of realize later in your life you miss it. And so, part of this feels like it's leaning in on that. But the other thing, and what makes this feel a little bit more like the direction she would later on go in, is this almost has that sort of, to me, like Okie from Muskogee kind of vibe. It's not quite as pushing this sort of like conservative values as that, but she has the line, "Out in the country, there's no talk that God is dead," and kind of implying like anywhere outside there is sort of godless, and it's definitely seeing the virtues of a family life. Yeah, I guess this mama is just not really sucking it to the Harper Valley PTA anymore. But
No.
yeah, despite that, this sort of like more conservative family values that it's pushing, again, very lightly, it that doesn't detract from it. Like, it feels just like somebody longing for their sort of a simple home life that they grew up in, and it works. It works as a song. Obviously, it was a hit for a reason, and I think if you think about the year 1970 and sort of like the end of a lot of a very turbulent time. I mean, there was more turbulence to come, of course, but I think it fits with sort of the mood of the time when this came out too.
I can see that a little bit, but I think when you talk about that, I could see this being like a mid '60s song. Like I'm kind of surprised it came out after Harper Valley PTA because it is a very different outlook um, from that song. It's kind of it feels like it's gone back several years or like from an entirely different person. It is a little interesting lyrically to follow Harper Valley PTA up with this, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
I don't dislike the song. It's just an interesting timeline of lyrical themes there.
No, I actually quite enjoy it. I mean, truthfully, I even if you go as sort of hokey as Okie from Muskogee can be, I love that song too. You're telling a tale and you're a narrator of a certain kind of thing. You know, I think Merle Haggard's story with that is that was about his sort of his father's experience, and I buy that. I do, and I think this is probably coming from a different place and narrator and really from what everything I've learned about Jeannie C. Riley, this seems more like how she would feel about things than Harper Valley PTA. I mean, I can only espouse that from what's written, and what's been said, but it is odd chronologically that this came after, no doubt about it. But it's a great song. I mean, I that's the thing is like if you want a hit, and they obviously found one here, that this is the one to go for, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I do feel like this seems more in stride with Jeannie, but at the time, I think she was maybe changing a little bit and trying to go away from that image that maybe she had not even been herself, but kind of publicly had become just due to the nature of that song and what people envisioned of her. But just like as an outlier song, this song's great. Um, I think if you separate it from that, it doesn't seem as satirical as Okie from Muskogee at all. I don't really think this is a satirical song, but
No,
a great country song.
yeah, I don't think it's trying to go in that direction at all. I think it's quite genuine, actually, which is why it works really well too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so track two is A Change of Heart, and this was written by Gene Evans. And so this one kind of starts off with a guitar riff, too. Kind of reminds me of some of those Elvis songs he had, some of the movie songs back in the 60s. Has a really beautiful guitar solo in it with some pedal steel kind of sprinkled in throughout. And this one is kind of, lyrically about changing your mind before splitting up a marriage. And, it says, before we break the ties that bind.
Yeah, I think we looked this up. I mean, I don't know if this is on the whole record. Jerry Kennedy maybe was the one playing guitar on this. I really like.
I think he helped. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You said he helped with some of it, or
I think he helped produce with Shelby.
okay, okay, yeah. I mean, that would make sense. I think the guitar on the entire record's pretty consistent. Is my general feeling. I mean, it seems like a pretty good band. Um, there's not really any lulls, and the instrumentation is really lush. I think it helps this record a lot. I mean, it sounds like a record of that time in that way. Like, thankfully, it doesn't dip into that sort of what got a little bit tired sounding to me, like the orchestral sound with like heavy strings or anything like that. Like, it's just a very it's not dense, but it's warm. It's a warm record to me overall, and this fits right into that too. And yeah, it's funny. I like the feeling of this one. I mean, it's a breakup track, or it sounds like it, but yeah, you feel like you could hear this song playing on like a cabana on the beach, and Jeannie's just kind of singing this one in a little bit more of like a pop forward direction, and clearly that worked well for her.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's as good of a time too to talk. You mentioned Jerry Kenny; he plays dobro and guitar on the album. And then, from what we can gather, I'm not gonna say this is 100% accurate, but it seems reasonably accurate, and probably is. Is it Harold Bradley, Ray Eddington, and Chip Young play guitar as well? I'm pretty sure Pete Drake's on still on all of this. Bob Moore on bass. You got Buddy Harmon and Kenneth Buttrey on drums. The great Buddy Spiker played fiddle, and you got Hargus Pig Robbins, maybe the best ever on piano and organ, and then George Tidwell on trumpet. So, I mean, it's not shocking that Singleton used like Nashville A Team guys because the record instrumentally sounds like that. It's a flawless album instrumentally for sure.
Yeah, pretty much all the heavy hitters you would have wanted to ask for. Yeah, you're right. Now that I'm looking at this, yeah, Jerry Kennedy is credited with dobro on guitar, but Harold Bradley, Ray Eddington, and Chip Young are credited on guitar as well. So probably a different mixture across that. Um, it's interesting was that this I guess it was recorded in Singleton Sound Studio, so it makes sense that they recorded that in like late 1969, and they came out in the 70s. But um, yeah. I mean, so far to me, like there's no part this album really lulls. I think it kind of keeps building on something that you want to listen to this album from start to finish, and I feel like this track kind of continues to lead you in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. I think thematically this song sounds a little more 60s than the opener and like maybe a little more pop, but the music shifts a little bit on the album, but yeah, there's definitely not really bad songs at all. So
No, it almost reminded me of something you would have heard. I don't know why my mind went there, but like not a theme song from a James Bond movie, but like a lot of those early James Bond movies, they would be, yeah, like I mentioned, like sitting on a cabana or like, it would be setting a stage or in a transition. Like I could see part of this song like playing over that, it almost has a cinematic feel. Maybe that's probably the pop element of it. Like this is a lot less of a country song to me than some of the others.
yeah, for sure. That's why I was saying it. I think it reminds me of some of those Elvis movie songs. Very similar vibe.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so track three is "Am I That Easy to Forget?" and this was written by Carl Ballou, and it says Shelby Singleton, but I don't. I think just Carl Ballou wrote this one, but I'll take. I'll credit them both just to be safe. And this one slows down. It's a really beautiful waltz country song. Um, I know Debbie Reynolds covered it at one point, had a hit. Skeeter Davis, George Jones covered it, and even Engelbert Humperdinck had a number one hit with this song. It was a pop hit. So, really beautiful song. Pete Drake's playing off Jeannie's vocals really well. I can see that George Jones. I'm pretty sure I've heard this version with George Jones. It's a great song.
I was not familiar with Engelbert Humperdinck. Um, Great name. But did he make he was probably had the most successful run with that song then out of all the people you listed?
Yeah, number one pop. He did not make country music. He was a huge like pop singer back then. I don't know any of his hits. I always thought his name. I mean, I don't no shade to Engelbert. He definitely has a name that's made me laugh since I was a kid. But
I mean, I
he was a huge star.
interestingly, he wasn't born with that name. I just looked into him, not to go down the rabbit hole, but yeah, it's just fascinating that that's the name that his stage name that he would pick. Yeah, I guess it was a German composer name that he decided to go with, but that's fascinating. I mean, I guess it just shows like some of these songs were written in such a way that they could kind of turn into a hit, like a cross genre hit. It speaks to the strength of the writing on some of these.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, he was a huge star back then. I mean, he's still alive, so he's definitely a name you see everywhere when you're digging through records. So I'm not. It's interesting. I should have listened to his version. I don't. I'm curious what this song would sound like in a non-country format because it is a very country waltz style song. But
Yeah, and so much of what makes it is that well, again, I'll say again, like there's so many crack musicians on this. They're just fantastic. Pete Pete's playing on this is just, it makes the song in a lot of ways. But to me, like the best part of this album, and part of the reason why I'm glad we dug into it, is Jeannie singing. I mean, she's just great. I love her voice. I don't ever get tired of it, and it's every one of these songs complements her voice so well. But I just don't. It's hard for me. This is a much of a compliment to her. It's hard for me to hear these songs sung by another person.
Yeah, I mean, a good song's a good song. So I think no matter the style it's done or the format, if it's a good song, somebody can do something with it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, Pete Drake's pedal playing on this just has a sort of like sadness tinged sound going on. It's a, I mean, it's a slow track. It sort of brings the mood a little down on this record. I don't know if it's bad, but it it's definitely gonna clash with sort of the feeling of the next one, which to me is like one of the standouts. But I don't want to push us in that way unless you have, if you have some other things to say about this track.
Oh no, this song's big time sad. It's, I mean, am I that easy to forget? It's a tearjerker country song, but yeah, that definitely takes. And also one of my favorite ones on this track four. That's a no no, which it's written by Ben Peters, and I would say for this album having the A list Nashville cats playing on it, some of the songwriters are not up. They're lesser known. They seem to have been people that maybe worked for Shelby and just wrote songs for him. Like the Brine album had so many insane songwriters on it. Um, Not as much on this one, but Ben Peters, he wrote Before the Next Teardrop Falls, Kiss an Angel, Good Morning, Daytime Friends. He wrote a ton of hits, so not surprised he wrote this one because this song is really brilliant. Definitely one of my favorites, as I said. It's super upbeat, and like Wes was saying, the going from the slow one into this song is, it's kind of a nice transition. You're slow down, and then it just takes off.
Yeah, the next two tracks really have, they're just fun to me. Like they're really fun tracks, and in the same way that Harper Valley PTA was, like I like Jeannie singing these, and she feels like she's having fun with them. And yeah, that's fascinating that the same person would have written Before the Next Teardrop Falls and Kiss an Angel, Good Morning. I mean, two fantastic tracks. Makes sense because this has that feeling of, like you mentioned earlier, like a song that almost feels like more of a mid 60s feel and vibe. Like, yeah, it has that sense. It's also kind of a progressive song. It's a great like tell off song. You know, don't come home expecting mama's a waiting here in her pajamas, because I've told you many times that's a no no. Oh, you should know by now that's a no no. Um, it's just funny to me. It's a funny track, and I like it. I like that it's sort of like has that sort of like standoffish feel. You know, we need a track like that, I think. And yeah, you talked about the pedal steel. I mean, we've said it a couple of times, but it is really intense and powerful on this. Um, and the only other thing I'll say too is just that, the same writer as Next Teardrop Falls. It's interesting. We'll talk about this towards the end, but there's a song on this album that has a very similar structure to that song, and I wonder if it's because it shared some songwriters. And I mean, so much of country is always borrowing from other artists and versions of songs, so I think that's not unusual, but it stands out on this album.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can hear some of those similarities on this album. This song, I thought maybe George Jones could have sung this song. It sounds like something he would have sung at some point, but I looked it up, and the only other version of this I could find was Lynn Anderson also did the cover that reached number two in the same year. So we're back in 1969. So great song. Definitely one that I recommend listening to. If you only chose one off this album, it'd probably be that one.
Yeah, it's funny. As we continue to talk through this, You mentioned Lynn Anderson doing this. I think Skeeter Davis doing the song before it, and um, later we'll talk a little bit about Loretta. But yeah, I sometimes feel like Jeannie C. Riley doesn't get mentioned up there with some of those great singers and performers from that era, and I think she should be mentioned. I mean, in my opinion, this stands up there with the best. And I don't think that her career stayed in that same place, which is perhaps why people don't talk about this album as much. But I think as we dig even further into it, we spent a lot of time with it this last week, and I never got tired of listening to it. I actually wanted to keep coming back to the songs and kind of diving in. And this one in particular, I feel like I'll continue to listen to this long after we move away from this episode. It's just a really good song.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell. I mean, she definitely had the biggest hit ever by a woman in country, outside of maybe 9 to 5 by Dolly or a couple of her songs. This was a Harper Valley PTA was bigger than any song anyone ever put out. I think, I mean, you can go into deep dive on her life, but I definitely think it had a little to do with just her finding religion and backing off on doing a lot of country stuff and doing mostly gospel and religious albums. I think was in a way not quite retirement, but at least just like taking a step back. So she didn't have the same output as some of the other people we know, which kind of takes me into track 5, which is "We Were Raised on Love," and I said this song sounds kind of like Loretta Lynn. I see a little bit similarities in their voices at times, and lyrically, this one has a little bit of a theme that I could see Loretta singing. And this one was written by Don Hill and Fred Birch.
Yeah, it feels like it's like almost the style of a Tom T. Hall track too. Like it's a story. It's sort of like a not like a list song, but it is going through and telling a story about like sort of like a I could see the little small town and like kind of what they're talking through on this album. And um one thing as I was making my notes is like this sounds like a Beatles song or something. And then you mentioned it does sound like there's maybe a sitar on this particular track. I mean, how common was that? I don't know of a lot of country songs that had one.
Yeah, this is a really unique song. It has really, really country lyrics. Not even like necessarily conservative lyrics, but they're just super country. And I would be willing to bet there's sitar on this song. And it has a trumpet too on the chorus, which is like beautiful and kind of I don't even know if it's Tahana sound. It is really interesting. This is also a really great song on this. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I it also works really well. Like Jeannie is just singing it in a super countrified way, and it just got me thinking. Like the name of the store owner she sings is walked into the store of Mr. J.P. Lockett, and I think she says J.P. Lockett. And that's sort of like it's just sung perfectly well that way. And uh, it's a country song, and it's you're singing from the perspective of someone who lived and kind of was in that world. And I don't know, it works really well on this. Um, I just love some of the lines. I stepped up my small for my 14 years. I told Mr. Lockett to look at right here. Behind every rich man, you can find a crime, and looking at you sure brings a few to mind. I mean, it's a great track. I love the story of this. Like it almost is like a little short story.
Yeah, I agree. There's some really good songwriting on this album, and this is a standout for sure, instrumentally and lyrically. The song grew on me for sure. I really liked it.
I almost wonder, it's like the way Jeannie's singing on this when she's sort of telling more of a story. It does feel like you get more of her like natural accent in a lot of ways. And some of the more pop forward songs, I don't know if you get as much of that. Do you think that was on purpose? Do you think it was played a little bit more on this because it's sort of telling that story? I mean, I don't know for sure, but what's your take on that?
I don't know. I don't think she has as strong of a country accent as like Loretta on a lot of her songs. That's a little more pop and refined, but I don't know. I listened to her talk a bunch, but she was from Texas. So
Yeah.
probably not even like. I know Harper Valley PTA was all about attitude, but I doubt it was even on purpose. Probably just naturally happened.
Well, it works very well. Just, I mean, this song just feels like it's fun. Again, I find this like the middle part of this. The album starts off really well, and then the middle section is probably my favorite part. We'll get deeper in as sort of we get closer to the end of the record, and maybe some of that is like again, I'd have to go look at the album, but yeah, oh, you listed this. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to the end of side A, so makes sense. I feel like a lot of the heavy hitters would have been on side A. Not too surprising, but there hasn't been a lull yet. This is probably like the high point right now for me.
Yeah, so that takes us to the end of side A if you had the LP version of this back in the day. And that is I Almost Called Your Name. This was another one written by Margaret Lewis and Myra Smith. And I noticed Linda Martell did a version of this on her album that Shelby Singleton also made around the same time. And her version and Jeannie's is one of the standouts on the album. Just a beautiful song. It's about someone with a lover but longing for someone else. Yes, I kissed him, but I almost called your name. And then again, Pete Drake's pedal steel on this is so magical. It really adds to the emotion of the song, and it's a slower song. I mean, it could almost be a soul song. That's just really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I knew whenever I heard this song, I didn't immediately make the connection that I had heard it elsewhere, but immediately I was like, I know this song. Where have I heard this before? Well, it's part of my radio show when I was like floating around the 1970s. I have a vinyl copy of Freddie Fender's debut, studio album before the next teardrop falls, and he does a version of this song too, and it's equally great. It works just as well in his style. So again, it's just one of those songs. It's so well written, and it's a genuine country song that yeah, you can do it in multiple different ways, and every one of their versions sounds a little bit different. And this one is it just works. I mean, it's a sad song. It's definitely like it's interesting how much we're moving between these sort of sad like you could be drinking on the bar stool kind of like country songs to sort of like almost like just fun tracks, like tracks that are played. They're not novelty tracks, but they're like tales, and they're operating in like a narrative voice that these like more straightforward country tracks just aren't doing. So it's an interesting album, if only for that, right? Like I don't, it all works very well together, but this track is has a lot more in common with like the second track on the record than the rest.
For sure. And, a lot of these producers just saw albums back then as just singles put on an album or a few singles and some songs. And it kind of feels like it on this album. But there's a lot of really good songs, and this is definitely one of the standouts in my opinion. Another one that definitely is worth listening to. Any version, just the songwriting of the song is great, but Pete Drake's pedal steel playing on this song is pretty magical.
As we've gotten more and more into these albums, and he keeps coming up, it amazes me how much he did because my first experience with Pete Drake was I'd heard the name, but I was crate digging for things to play on my radio show, and I found this one. It's just a Pete Drake like self-titled record, or maybe it had a title. I don't really remember, but I was looking for instrumental tracks, and you know he would play the pedal steel and do these sort of it's not like a vocoder. You probably know better than I do. What's he playing? Like it's a really bizarre sound of like he's modulating his vocals on them.
Oh, Pete Drake invented the talk box.
He invented it.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay,
and introduced it to Peter Frampton.
that's incredible because I mean the record I have is from probably around this same era, and he's doing that. So it makes sense. I can't think many people would have been using that. Who else would? No one else of that era would have. If he invented it, that makes more sense to me. But that's just fascinating because I almost think of him in this sort of like progressive light. And I, well, there's been a more, just while we're talking about pedal steel, like I think there has been a greater conversation happening around pedal steel and its importance, and it's the fact that it's not just a country music instrument. It works incredibly well in the genre, and that's clearly why it was used so extensively. But that's it. Just again speaks to like you can have these straightforward country tracks, and they can work really well, and the musicians on them can play that. But they were some of the best musicians, even if you take them out of that genre. And it's clear on this. I mean, this even though it's a country album, it plays like a pop album sometimes. Some of it almost sounds like it goes in the direction of like Buffalo Springfield or like the Birds. So it's just cool that you get that sense, and it's probably because a lot of these great like session players on the album too.
Oh yeah, I mean, Pete Drake plays on George Harrison's "All Things Must Pass." He, I mean, He's on Gary Stewart. He's on about everything. But I mean, for people that don't really know, it's those guys, especially the ones on this album. That was a 9 to 5 job for them, or sometimes they worked crazier hours, but they were just going to the studio. Shelby calls these guys up and says, "Hey, I have a song you want to play." They probably heard it one time and they just track their stuff and then leave. And that's kind of how it was back then. They weren't in touring bands. They just showed up to the studio, worked like a normal 9 to 5 job, and that's how a lot of them saw it. And then just are on so many. I mean, Pig Robbins is probably on thousands of songs, easy, and
Well, they did the
on most.
Nashville number system, I guess, is part of why they were all able to work together and across different genres. And it's kind of brilliant in its own sense. We could have a whole episode about that, probably, just how these session guys were able to get together. And I mean, yeah, oh, you're right. It was like a 9 to 5 thing. They'd just come in and knock out who knows how many songs and just come right back the next day and do it again, right?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, these guys are also brilliant. So they they make up what is the country sound that everyone knows. Especially, I mean, Pig Robbins is one of my probably my favorite piano player. He is absolutely brilliant. But Pete Drake is also up there as well for me. Really amazing pedal steel player out of the dozens that I love.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, he'll come up again and again, and it's always worth talking about that. And yeah, I mean, this is Jeannie's record, but so much of these session players helped fill in the sounds, and it works because of all of that together.
Oh, he will certainly come up again and again, especially when we cover Gary Stewart here coming up, because Pete Drake plays my favorite pedal steel lick ever.
Oh yeah,
So,
we'll be talking about that before.
all right, so that takes us to side B or track 7, which is Darlin' Days. And this was written by Dallas Frazier and Sanger Schaefer. Dallas Frazier was one of the best country songwriters, in my opinion. He had over 130 songs that were hits. There Goes My Everything is probably one of my personal favorites. Um, but this particular song, Darling Days, Billy Walker had recorded a version in 1970 as well and charted with it. Conway Twitty also recorded a version. Buddy Spiker's fiddle, I loved on this one. And obviously, another beautiful pedal steel solo. I thought this kind of sounded a little like another George Jones track, but it definitely sounds like I mentioned. Her voice here really does sound a lot like Loretta Lynn, just a little more refined and less twangy.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. When I read your note, you said that as I was trying to find videos from this, and I had the same experience as you. I could only really find her doing a country girl, not none of the rest of these. Maybe they just weren't played live, or they weren't played in anywhere that was recorded. I guess that's not that uncommon if they weren't hits back in the day. But Yeah, you mentioned Loretta Lynn. There's actually a lot of videos of Loretta and Jeannie C. Riley playing songs together. I don't know that they had any commercially released tracks together, but there's certainly a lot of videos of them kind of playing together and playing off each other. And a lot of these songs have that spirit of Loretta, so it makes sense. And yeah, the people you mentioned who also had a version of this, I could also see it as like a George Jones, and I could see Conway doing it. It's the most straight country track on the album. The fiddle's fantastic, and it has an old timey sort of feel. This one doesn't feel like a song that came out in 1970, to be
No, I don't really think so. And I mean, it makes sense because, Loretta was really a pioneer for women in country. She learned from Patsy Cline and they had quite a relationship. And so I think that she kind of took that on as like, I also want to mentor and be friends. And she seemed to always be such a champion of other women in country music and uplifting them. So I'm not surprised at all in that because that was something Loretta was really great at. And so I could see them having a friendship, even if they didn't. I'd have to look. I'm not sure if they had any either, but I have seen some videos of them singing and their voices are really well together. But yeah, this really is a great country song. And if you don't know Dallas Frazier, I would recommend looking up some of the songs he wrote. He wrote Alley Oop, which is kind of like a pop chart song. It was a number one hit, and I think he wrote it when he was like a kid. He may have been like 12 years old or something. That song's great. He wrote Elvira, which I think a lot of people know. There Goes My Everything, I love because Elvis's version, but Dallas Frazier wrote a ridiculous amount of great songs. And there's even a great George Jones album. George Jones sings Dallas Frazier. That's probably one of George's best. It's kind of hard to find too. I don't even know if it's streaming, but that's one that you should definitely listen to if you like George Jones.
honest. Yeah, sometimes the more we're going into this and the more we're kind of talking about these song by song, maybe we're not diving in as heavy on some of these like more country standards, but I also think that's just sort of the way country was being done in that time. Like you and I both read George Jones's like autobiography, and the way he talks about coming in and like doing a whole album in one session and just sort of like knocking it out. Like country was just sort of done that way in a lot of ways, and it doesn't make it any less good, but I just feel like there's so many country albums that are just sort of done this way, right? You throw a few standards on there to fill things out, and uh, if you're lucky, they sound beautiful like most of the ones do on this, but they're not even filler songs. It's just the way that genre was sort of arranged at that time was you weren't making albums that were like, again, if you're lucky, they were lyrically driven and really strong, but that wasn't always the norm. If you had a couple of really good like country standards or just really like straight country tracks, then that was going to work, especially if you're trying to get it played on the radio.
Yeah, and I think that that's a beautiful part about country is I think a little bit of the familial aspect of it, where everyone were seemed like most people knew each other in Nashville back then, and just the business side of it, where there was just writers that worked for different publishing companies or different studios, and they all they did was sit and write songs. They didn't even release their own music. I think a lot of it had to do with the business aspect of it, where George Jones wrote some beautiful songs. Johnny Paycheck wrote beautiful songs. Loretta Lynn. A lot of these people wrote really great songs, but they were on the road 24/7. And when they weren't touring, they were recording. And so, just most of those artists, I don't think until maybe the outlaw movement, where artists were able to take back more of their own creative um, capacity, I just don't really think it was even in the cards for some of them. They were just recording what the studios wanted them to record because they wanted hits. So they didn't have as much creative freedom to do that, which in turn created a lot of brilliant songs because thankfully those writers were unbelievable. But there is a lot more covers and songs that, 10, 20 people did the same song. And, some of them, five people had a hit with the same song. It's quite unique. But even Willie, who you would say is one of the greatest songwriters ever, or Waylon hardly even wrote his own songs. So I think it's something that I don't try to look as and critically as, oh, this person didn't write as many songs, or, you know, that's just kind of the way it was then.
Yeah, yeah, it's a unique element of the genre, and I think it also it's playing out this way a little bit more on this record because we went from a series of songs that were written in the mid '80s by someone who was a pretty well known songwriter. Talking about Johnny Paycheck, and we were listening to an album that wasn't released until like the '90s, and that has its own unique history. And then we covered John Prine and his first self-released, album on Oh Boy, and that came with its own feeling too, right? You're self-releasing. You're not really stuck to having to do what the labels are telling you. And again, we're in the mid '80s for that. Like, it's just a whole different game in the early '70s in country, and it's not a bad thing at all. It just it's a unique element of talking about this genre, and some of really what makes it kind of charming and unique in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, and that's definitely a critique I've fallen into, but the more I've gotten older and try to have an open mind, I realize that's it's not a fair critique of music. You hear people say, "Well, that person didn't write that song," or so and so. I would put John Prine, as we talked about, as up with any songwriter to ever exist, and even on that album where he had full creative control, he was not writing all that by himself. He was working with people. That's just kind of the nature of country. It's a collaborative process where people want to involve other people. It's really fun. And you have so many great writers. It's like, why limit yourself to just yourself? And it's really beautiful. So I love that about country, and it's definitely opens my mind about music in general. And a good song is a good song. It's whether someone can own it and how it's played and sung and how it makes someone feel. And that's how I like to view that. I think with an open mind is more rewarding.
Yeah,
But anyways,
yeah, no, you're right. I mean,
that
I used to have that same feeling like when I would go and try to find records to play on the Gold Rush. You dig into a lot of like country musicians' discographies, and it can be really overwhelming because they have so many different albums. Like, I mean, a lot of them have 4 or 5 albums in a year. Like people want to talk about what's that band, King Gizzard and the Lizard. What I'm talking about. What's the name of that band?
yeah, I think you're close.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
This is a country podcast.
yeah. Well, no dish on them, but like country musicians were doing the like 4 or 5 albums a year thing a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of volume for trying to cut something to make a little bit of extra cash and get it on the radio and get some notoriety, and yeah, it works. It's not a ding on any of this, in my opinion.
No, not at all. So that takes us to track 8, "Wish You Were Here." This one's written by Becky Bluefield and Celia Bass. I really like the line in the song, "It's better to love and lost than never known to love at all." This is another really great song.
This is a cover of a Pink Floyd song, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, actually, Pink Floyd covered this one.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I knew that it was in the inspiration. No, it's just the same. Just a coincidence.
It is a coincidence. So that's also kind of a very typical line. And I think that's the way everyone's feel. That's probably why it's a very well known line and something that everyone's said in their life. And, this is just another great country song about longing for someone that's not around, just like the Pink Floyd song.
Yeah, I don't even really have that much to say about this one, and I think my main takeaway is it's got a good groove. The song moves fast and it feels good. I think of all the tracks on this album, it's the most sort of like honky tonk track. Like I could totally see walking into like Robert's Western World or something here in Nashville and paying somebody $20 to get that song played at some point. It's just a good one. It plays like a good honky tonk song.
Yeah, I agree. I like this song, and there was nothing that was extraordinary about it or weird or different. Just a good song. All right, so track 9 on the album is "Your Old Love Letters," and this one was written by Johnny Bond, who wrote a ton of songs from all the way back, I think, into the 40s.
Bond,
He wrote,
Johnny Bond.
yeah, exactly. Maybe they're related, but I don't think so. This is definitely a slower country track. It has more pedal steel on it. I saw Porter Wagner recorded a version in the early 60s and got to number 10 in the charts. Um, I really like the line, the first you wrote me was the sweetest, the last one broke my heart in two. And this song's pretty sad. It's just the narrators reading their old love letters while they burn them. And it has the line, our love is there among the embers and the ashes of your letters tied in blue, which that imagery's so great. Just the love burning away with the blue embers and reminiscing on that. That's actually some really brilliant imagery in those lyrics. And this song's great. I love this song.
Yeah, I could see that being a like a Porter Wagner song, no doubt about it. I think this is something that I was thinking a lot about Jeannie C. Riley though, is that I like her doing sort of a jilted lover song, the same way I like sort of when Loretta would do it, from a women's perspective. That wasn't common. I would say they were some of the first to do that, and to sort of turn that on its head, and it's nice. I mean, it was at that time hardly anyone I think would have classified country music as progressive. But when you play a song like this, like a sort of like a breakup song, a jilted lover song, and you sing it as a woman in that era, it wasn't being done that often, and I think that it really works. And I really like when Jeannie does it. I don't know, just something about her voice and the way she sings it. She makes it feel real, and it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, I agree. This is, you know, it's a pretty straightforward song, but when it's sung from a woman's perspective, it just kind of changes the nature of the song. Where both sides, it's still sad and, you know, interesting song here, but definitely a standout. And it's kind of funny because this is a really sad song, and the imagery and things are beautiful. And I didn't really know Johnny Bond wrote a bunch of songs for other people because I had only known him from his own songs, and he wrote stuff like Sick Sober and Sorry and Three Sheets in the Wind and a bunch of silly like drinking songs like that. So 10 Little Bottles, I think's one. He has some great album covers, so it was interesting to hear this like more sentiment. I don't know, sentimental is the right word, but a really deep song with some beautiful imagery was nice. I was kind of shocked. It was a really well written song.
Did he do any Mo Bandy songs?
I doubt it because
Maybe a little bit
he
later.
he was. I don't even know if he would have been around by the time. Yeah, he died in 1978, so
So yeah,
probably not.
not really a chance. Yeah,
A lot of those songs are pretty old that he was writing.
yeah. It just has that sound kind of like I think of drinking songs, and feels like that there's a connection there. But maybe it was inspired by Mr. Johnny Bond.
Yeah, his drinking songs are a little different. You should listen to. Sick, Sober, and Sorry is pretty funny.
I think I know that song, or I've heard it. I'd have to like go listen to it again though and refamiliarize myself.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sing it for you here, but that takes us to track 10, I Love Him, which was written by Fred Birch, who is from Paducah, Kentucky, which is Wes's neck of the woods.
Close. Yeah, it's a little further west than where I'm from, the wild west of Paducah. But yeah, it was not that far off. I used to you grow up in the South, you hear tornado sirens. If you're lucky, you have a basement, you go running. We would always hear the National Weather Service of Paducah, Kentucky. The like robotic voice. We'd sit in the basement and listen to that. So it's close to me, but that's like almost as far west in Kentucky as you can go.
Oh, that robot sounded more like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh
But
yeah, he'd have been
anyways,
a good one to say that too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean the western side of the state feels like California when you're from Central Kentucky, but I couldn't find a lot on Fred Birch. He wrote some obscure Elvis songs, some other songs I wasn't super familiar with, but this song's definitely more sentimental and slow. It's it's got more of Pig Robbins keys on this, a little more prominent with some strings. It's a more produced pop sounding song in my opinion. I said it was probably my least favorite song on the record too, but it wasn't horrible. It wasn't one I probably would keep repeating over and over to listen to if I was choosing one off this track or off this album.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about it either. That's sort of how I felt. I the album tends to taper off a little bit towards the end. Not completely, but I do wonder if you're just as you're getting to the B side of the record, if that has something to do with it. Like, not everything is neatly arranged that way, but frankly, it used to be, right? Like, people used to think about what's on the A side, what's on the B side, what comes towards the end. And it's interesting that you get this track that's it's not a downer, but there's just nothing. Like, you could take this song off the record, and I don't think it would hurt the record at all if it wasn't here.
No, I don't really disagree. I think, this could have been some filler, but it's not a horrible song. But I think that takes us to track 11, which is Wherever You Are. And this is another one written by Margaret Lewis and Myra Smith. I love the Spanish style guitar and the trumpets on this one. I thought it sounded a little like El Paso, but it was a little different turn on the album. I enjoyed this song.
It's got the sepia filter. You know that, like the Breaking Bad when they go to Mexico, it's got like everything's in sepia. Um, it has that sort of influence. No, it really is played well. The Spanish guitar influence is wonderful. It has that sort of Spanish sound. That the guitar playing is almost like a sort of traditional style there. Like, um, it makes sense. I mean, that she would have played with that style or wanted to play on a song like it, or that they would pick one. I mean, she's a Texas woman at the end of the day, right?
Oh yeah, this, and I think this album has a lot of Texas feel to it. It's pretty subtle at points, but it definitely has some of those, especially with the trumpet and Spanish guitar and some things. Definitely fitting.
Yeah, I don't even. Would you call that like they're almost in like a flamenco style guitar there, and parts
Yeah,
of this?
I would say so.
It works. I actually wish there was a little bit more of this kind of sound on this record. I would have liked that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree at all with that. And I thought the trumpet on this album was surprising and it works really well. It doesn't really detract from the sound at all. It somehow fits perfectly.
Yeah, I think it's not overdone, and it's done. The songs that they picked it on and where they picked it work really well. I don't. I like the production on this record quite a bit. It's a very warm record overall. All the songs kind of have the same, even though they're all some can be quite different from one another. Like, um, it's very consistent in that way. Like, I I I think it leads to why you would want to listen to the entire record from start to finish. It sort of invites you to do that in a lot of ways.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, you can have whatever opinion you want of Shelby Singleton, but he definitely knew how to produce a record and records of all genres. I mean, he was pretty brilliant about producing. So you can definitely deep dive again on Cocaine and Rhinestones if you want to listen to more information about him. But definitely his production style and the people playing on this was a huge help to the sound of the record.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So technically, this album, if you have it, it seems like it was only released on cassette and vinyl back in the day. I think there's an 8-track version. So
Ooh,
Wes
okay.
could have listened to that in high school. But
Yeah, and the Camaro Z28. That's right.
yeah. Um, but I don't even see there's a CD version of this that you can buy. But randomly enough, on streaming, there's a track 12, which is I'll Take What's Left of You. And this one was written by Clark Bentley, Jerry Clark, and Ray Riley. And those same writers wrote Color Me Country for Linda Martell, which I think we'll would like to talk about that album because these two albums have a lot of parallels in different ways. But this song starts with strings and keys, and This is the one I said it sounds very similar to Till the Next Teardrop Falls. Like it's almost the exact same melody.
The intro's almost identical.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's still a good song though. I think this is a better closer than the other one, so I don't really know why it was left off the album. It was released as a single, I found, and it was on some compilation album of hers, but I guess maybe it was supposed to be on the album and they left it off for whatever reason, time, pressing issues. Maybe it made the album too long, but someone put it back on the streaming version, so it's there, and I'm glad it's there. It's actually a pretty good song.
Yeah, I mean, even weirdly enough, I don't know how it's listed on this, or maybe this is common. I was trying to find like when that might have been added or any kind of like wiki page on this record, and it just doesn't exist. But it's listed on like the Bandcamp version too. So I'm not sure where that sort of unreleased original track came from. I think you mentioned this too. I know we're on the last track and talking about that a little bit, but I love the album artwork on this. Like, I'm just looking at it again here now, and like it, there's all these sort of nice like trees in the back, and there's like a sort of like natural rail, like a wooden railing, and like Jeannie's just wearing this like really cool looking like floral jumpsuit. She just looks cool, honestly. Like if I saw this record and I was shopping, I would want to buy it, you know?
Oh yeah, this album cover is awesome. Yeah, she's got the jumper on and the very late '60s look. That's a little more subdued than her mini skirt that she got so much traction for. But on the back, it actually is her in a mini dress with her high go-go boots.
Again, just looks very cool there too, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
I mean she was definitely a fashion icon at the time. I mean she was, like we said, she was a huge star.
yeah, yeah, and it's I mean, at least the version I'm looking at, I think this is the common like way this the way the front of the album just looked. That the track listing and sort of the title is like on like a broken or like piece of like 2x4 or like wood or something, and it has like the country girl, Jeannie C. Riley country girl, with like a little like yellow orb kind of in the middle. It's just cool looking. I don't know. I really like it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great album cover. All right, so that is the end of this album. Do you have anything else to say about Jeannie C. Riley's Country Girl from 1970?
Um, I'm really glad that we dove into this because I knew Jeannie C. Riley. Um, I think I had heard Country Girl. Of course, I know Harper Valley PTA and some of the others. But I didn't know this record from start to finish, and I would listen to it again and again. Really, to be honest with you, I think it's a great Genie album that should be talked about. Again, we kind of hit on the way that country records were made in that era, and sometimes maybe things got glossed over because of that. Even though this one had some hits, like it's not a forgotten album or anything like that, but I don't think this one gets mentioned as much as it should.
No, I agree. I mean, a lot of her work doesn't really get mentioned, and she has some really brilliant songs besides Harper Valley PTA, so she is worth checking out. And like I said, to the Cocaine and Rhinestones, if you want to deep dive into Harper Valley PTA or a little more about her life, it's interesting. She also just did an interview on the Drifting Cowboy that you could listen to. But we just wanted to dive into this album that neither of us really knew, and obviously there's not much out there at all about this album. And it was, yeah, like I probably listened to it 100 times in the last week, just immersing myself in it to talk about. But I'm also a little sick in the head for country music, so I also just like to listen to it. It was great, great songs, good singing.
Yeah, it just reinforces that Jeannie was someone with a legacy for a reason, and Uh, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you and I are just always out there trying to. We just love talking about music and these kind of albums, and yeah, I think it's. I hope if anything, people again they can, like you mentioned, dive into Jeannie's life. We are not the experts on that at all, but we have heard a couple of country albums, and mm, we tend to know what we like, and this certainly fits that bill. And frankly, I think it would go beyond just something you and I enjoy. I feel anybody who has any kind of enjoyment of this genre, you would be letting yourself down if you didn't listen to this. Truth be told.
For sure. Just a great country record. And yeah, like Wes said, this is never going to be a research heavy deep dive into stuff, but we just want to find records that we love that maybe haven't been talked about or by artists that are super talked about, but there's an album that maybe someone hasn't heard a lot of. Because there's so many country albums that exist and have fallen through the cracks, or I'm constantly finding stuff where I'm like, how have I never heard this? How is no one, no, why is no one talking about this? Is as good as anything? And I think that's just kind of how music works sometimes. There's still so much out there. So we just want to find stuff and talk about it. Even though I will say, Wes, not the last one, but the Johnny Paycheck and this one, it did feel like I was doing a collegiate level research and detective work to just find anything out about these. So it's going to be interesting how some of these turn out because sadly, lost to time and information, some things don't really have much out there about them, and that's kind of fun. If we're the two guys that have to dive into these to find whatever information is out there, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, sometimes I felt like maybe trying to research this one, I was a little bit more of a Ernest or Mr. Bean than I was like a Humphrey Bogart. But we've we found info at the end of the day, and it's fun. It really is, and I encourage other people to do the same. If you have a record that you really enjoy, and you're just curious about sort of some of the history of it or who might have played on it. Some of these records take some time to find that info, but we're lucky enough that other people have gone out there and done that work, and it's really fun when you do make that discovery, and I think that's a fun part of the process when we're putting this together.
For sure. And I thought you were more like the country Columbo. But, anyways, that is all for us this week. And thanks for listening to Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes. I'll be back here with Wes coming at you soon. See y'all later.
But looking forward to it. Adios.
Adios.